Daniel Carter woke up to the sound of deep, echoing voices. His vision was blurry, his body heavy. The air smelled different, like metal and strange spices. He tried to move, but his wrists and ankles were bound with glowing energy cuffs. The last thing he remembered was his ship being attacked. He had been on a diplomatic mission, traveling between human and alien colonies, when his vessel was ambushed by a massive fleet. Now he was here, wherever here was. A loud voice echoed through the chamber. "The human is awake." Daniel blinked and finally saw his surroundings. He was inside a grand hall, lined with tall, dark pillars. The walls shimmered with alien symbols, and dozens of armored warriors stood in formation. At the center of the room, sitting on a massive throne, was the ruler of this place, King Vortal of the Zitaraxian Empire. The king was huge, at least 8 feet tall, with dark blue skin and glowing golden eyes. His armor was decorated with sharp, curved spikes, and his cape was made of the fur of some massive beast. He leaned forward, studying Daniel with a mixture of curiosity and amusement. "A human," the king rumbled. "Small, fragile, yet your kind has caused much trouble in the stars." Daniel didn't respond. He knew better than to speak out of turn in front of an alien ruler. Instead, he straightened his posture, showing no fear. He had learned long ago that weakness invited aggression in unfamiliar territory. King Vortal smirked. "You are different from the others we have captured. Most beg for their lives. You do not." Still, Daniel remained silent, his sharp green eyes scanning the room, searching for any possible escape routes. The king let out a deep chuckle. "Interesting. Very well, human. I have decided not to kill you." There were murmurs in the hall. Some of the warriors seemed confused, others displeased. It was clear that humans were not welcomed in the Zitaraxian Empire. The king raised a hand, silencing them. "Instead, I will give you as a gift." Daniel's body tensed. A gift. King Vortal turned toward a second throne beside him. Daniel had been so focused on the king that he hadn't noticed her. She was unlike any alien he had ever seen. Queen Salvera. Tall and elegant, the queen's deep violet skin shimmered under the golden light of the hall. Her long silver hair was braided with delicate ornaments, and her dark, piercing eyes studied him like a scientist observing a rare creature. She wore a flowing, layered gown, but Daniel could tell that beneath the regal clothing, she was strong. A warrior queen, not just a royal figure. The king gestured toward her. "My queen has always been curious about the lesser species. Let us see if a human can entertain her." Daniel finally spoke, his voice calm. "I am no toy." There was a brief silence. The warriors tensed, some reaching for their weapons. No one spoke to the king like that. Then, to his surprise, Queen Salvera smiled, a small, almost amused expression. King Vortal only chuckled again. "We shall see, human. We shall see." With a motion of his hand, 2 armored guards stepped forward, unlocking Daniel's cuffs. He was free to move, but not free to leave. Salvera stood from her throne, her tall form moving with grace. She approached him slowly, each step measured. Standing before him, she looked down, her gaze filled with quiet curiosity. "Come," she said simply. "Let us see if there is more to you than just stubbornness." Daniel took a deep breath. Whatever fate awaited him, one thing was clear: his survival would depend on more than just strength. It would depend on his wit, his mind, and perhaps something else entirely. Daniel walked beside Queen Salvera as 2 guards escorted them through the towering halls of the Zitaraxian palace. The floor beneath his boots was smooth and reflective, like polished obsidian, and the walls shimmered with golden patterns that pulsed softly, as if the palace itself was alive. He wasn't sure what the queen wanted from him, but one thing was clear: his fate was no longer in his own hands. Salvera didn't speak for a while. She moved with elegance, her long violet gown flowing behind her. Though she was taller than him by at least a foot, her presence wasn't intimidating like the king's. Instead, she carried herself with quiet confidence, her dark eyes studying him every now and then, as if trying to solve a puzzle. Finally, she broke the silence. "You are different from what I expected." Daniel glanced at her. "What did you expect?" She tilted her head slightly. "Humans are said to be weak, fragile creatures, and yet you stood before my king without fear." Daniel let out a slow breath. "Fear wouldn't have helped me." A small smile flickered across her lips. "Perhaps not." They continued walking until they reached a massive doorway guarded by two Xeraxian warriors. With a deep bow, the guards stepped aside, and the doors slid open to reveal a grand chamber. Daniel stepped inside and was momentarily stunned. The room was unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls were lined with enormous glass windows, showcasing a breathtaking view of a distant, glowing nebula. The ceiling was high, adorned with floating crystals that illuminated the chamber with soft blue light. Luxurious cushions and furniture made of sleek alien metal filled the space, giving it an elegant yet comfortable atmosphere. Salvera gestured toward a small table in the center. "Sit." Daniel hesitated for a moment before obeying. He had no choice but to go along with whatever this was. She sat across from him, watching him closely. "Tell me, human, what is your name?" "Daniel Carter." She repeated his name slowly, as if tasting the unfamiliar sound. "Daniel Carter. And Earth name?" He nodded. "And yours? Queen Salvera, right?" Her eyes glimmered with amusement. "You may call me Salvera when we are alone." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Alone?" She smirked. "Do not misunderstand, human. You are still my gift. But I have no interest in treating you like a mindless pet." He folded his arms. "Then why am I here?" Salvera leaned forward slightly, resting her chin on her hand. "Because I am curious." Daniel frowned. "Curious about what?" "Your kind." She gestured at him. "The Xeraxians have conquered many worlds, yet humans are different. You are not the strongest, nor the fastest. Your technology is not the most advanced. And yet, you survive. You thrive. Even when faced with impossible odds, you refuse to bow." Daniel met her gaze. "Maybe that's because we don't see ourselves as weak." Salvera studied him for a long moment before nodding. "Interesting." She stood up and walked toward the window, gazing at the stars. Her expression softened, as if lost in thought. "Long ago, I was like you," she said quietly. "A warrior, a soldier. But I was chosen to be queen, and my duty became loyalty to my king." She turned back to him. "Tell me, Daniel Carter, if you were in my place, would you accept such a fate?" Daniel exhaled slowly. "That depends. Did you have a choice?" She smiled faintly. "No, my destiny was decided for me." Daniel leaned back. "Then, no, I wouldn't accept it." Her dark eyes flickered with something unreadable. Surprise? Amusement? Perhaps both. Before she could speak again, a loud chime echoed through the chamber. The doors opened, and a royal servant stepped inside, bowing deeply. "My queen," the servant said, "the king requests your presence." Salvera's expression turned unreadable. She nodded, then glanced at Daniel. "Stay here. Do not try to escape. You will not get far." Daniel didn't argue. He simply watched as she left the room, the doors sliding shut behind her. Now alone, he took a deep breath and looked around. He was still a prisoner, but something was different. Salvera was different, and that meant his fate might not be as simple as the king believed. Daniel sat in the grand chamber, staring at the glowing nebula outside the massive windows. His mind raced. The Xeraxian king had gifted him to the queen as if he were some kind of possession, but Salvera didn't treat him like one. She was different, curious about him, about humans. But that curiosity could be dangerous. He didn't trust her yet. She was still a queen, still part of an empire that had likely conquered countless worlds, possibly even destroyed human colonies, But she was also something else. Lonely, perhaps. Trapped. The doors suddenly slid open. Daniel tensed, expecting the king or a group of guards. Instead, it was a Zyraxian servant. "You must eat, human," the servant said, placing a tray on the table before quickly leaving. Daniel eyed the food. It looked strange. Small, colorful cubes and a bowl of thick blue liquid. He sighed. "Guess I don't have much of a choice." He picked up one of the cubes and bit into it. To his surprise, it was sweet, like a mix between fruit and honey. He took a sip of the blue liquid. It tasted like spiced tea. Not bad. Before he could finish, the doors opened again. This time, it was Salvera. She moved with her usual grace, her long gown flowing like liquid silk. But there was something different about her. A slight tension in her shoulders, a flicker of thought behind her dark eyes. Daniel sat up. "You don't look happy." Salvera let out a quiet breath and sat across from him. "The king grows impatient." Daniel frowned. Impatient for what? She hesitated, then leaned forward slightly. "He expects me to break you." Daniel stiffened. "Break me." "Make you submit," she clarified. "Make you bow." He exhaled slowly. "And what do you expect?" Salvera studied him, then shook her head. "I do not know yet." Silence hung between them. Finally, Daniel spoke. "Why does he care so much?" Salvera's fingers traced the surface of the table. "The Zyraxian Empire thrives on power. Strength is everything. To take an enemy and force them to kneel. It proves dominance. It reinforces the king's rule." Daniel clenched his jaw. "And if I refuse?" Her expression darkened. "Then he will take matters into his own hands." A cold chill ran down Daniel's spine. He wasn't naive. He knew what that meant. If he didn't cooperate, the king would eventually see him as useless. And in an empire built on power, useless things didn't last long. But he wouldn't just give in. He couldn't. He leaned forward, locking eyes with Salvera. "And what do you want?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached out and took one of the small food cubes from his tray, examining it before placing it in her mouth. "I want to understand." Daniel tilted his head. "Understand what?" She swallowed the food and looked at him with a strange intensity. "Why humans refuse to break." Daniel smirked. "Maybe because we don't see ourselves as weak." Salvera considered that for a moment, then gave a soft chuckle. "You already told me that." "And I meant it." The queen leaned back, watching him closely. "You do not act like a prisoner." Daniel shrugged. "I don't plan on being one forever." A dangerous glint flickered in Salvera's eyes. "Do you wish to escape?" Daniel hesitated. He had to be careful here. If he said yes, she could report him to the king. But if he lied, he would lose what little trust he had started to build. "I wish to be free," he said finally. Salvera didn't react immediately. Instead, she stood and walked to the window, gazing at the distant nebula. "Freedom is a strange thing," she murmured. "Even those who think they have it are often trapped in ways they do not see." Daniel watched her carefully. "Are you talking about me? Or yourself?" She didn't answer. A long silence filled the chamber before Salvera finally turned back to him. "You are different, Daniel Carter." "So are you, Salvera." For the first time, she looked genuinely surprised, as if no one had ever said that to her before. Before she could respond, the doors slid open once more. A Zyraxian guard stepped inside and bowed deeply. "My queen, the king has summoned you." Salvera's face became unreadable. She gave Daniel one last look, then turned and followed the guard out. As the doors closed behind her, Daniel exhaled slowly. The king was watching, and sooner or later, he would test just how unbreakable Daniel truly was. Daniel sat in silence, staring at the closed doors. His heart was steady, but his mind was racing. The king had summoned Salvera. That could mean anything, an interrogation, a warning, or something worse. He needed to be careful. He was still a prisoner. And the Zyraxian king wasn't the type to show mercy. Minutes passed, then an hour. Finally, the doors slid open. Salvera entered, moving slower than before. Her expression was unreadable, but there was tension in her shoulders. She stepped closer, then stopped a few feet away from him. "What happened?" Daniel asked. She took a deep breath. "The king is suspicious." Daniel clenched his jaw. "Of what?" Salvera's eyes met his. "Of me." For the first time, Daniel saw something in her gaze. Uncertainty. She was usually calm, always in control. But now she looked almost conflicted. She continued, "He believes I am growing too interested in you." Daniel gave a half smile. "Well, he's not wrong." She didn't smile back. Instead, she lowered her voice. "He thinks I should treat you as nothing more than a captured enemy. That I should remind you of your place." Daniel's expression hardened. "And what do you think?" Salvera hesitated, then sat across from him. I do not see you as an enemy." That was the closest thing to trust she had ever given him. Daniel leaned forward. "Then why do you follow him?" She looked away. "Because I must." That wasn't a real answer. Daniel knew there was more to it, but he also knew she wouldn't tell him everything. Not yet. Instead, he decided to push in a different way. "Tell me something, Salvera. What would happen if you refused the king?" Her eyes snapped to his, and for the first time, he saw something close to fear. "I do not have the luxury of refusing him." Daniel frowned. "But you're the queen." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "And he is the king." Silence stretched between them. Daniel exhaled. "So what now?" Salvera looked at him for a long moment. Then she reached into the sleeve of her gown and pulled out a small metallic device. She slid it across the table toward him. Daniel picked it up cautiously. It was small, cold, and smooth. Some kind of advanced tech. "What is this?" Her voice was barely above a whisper. "A tracker." Daniel's grip tightened. "Why are you giving me this?" Salvera hesitated, then said, "Because the king will test you soon. And if things go wrong, you may need to run." Daniel's stomach twisted. "Test me how?" She stood. "I do not know yet. But be ready." Then she turned and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she paused. "Do not make me regret this, Daniel." And then she was gone. A dangerous game. The next day, Daniel was escorted to a new chamber by 2 Zyraxian guards. The room was larger, with high ceilings and strange glowing symbols carved into the walls. At the center stood a circular platform, and on it, the king. The Zyraxian ruler was tall, powerful, and covered in dark, armored plating. His glowing red eyes studied Daniel with a mix of amusement and disdain. Daniel didn't bow. He didn't kneel. He simply stood his ground. The king smirked. "You remain defiant." Daniel met his gaze. "That's what humans do." The king chuckled. "Then let us see how long that lasts." With a wave of his hand, a second figure stepped onto the platform. A Zyraxian warrior. Daniel's muscles tensed. The warrior was nearly 7 feet tall, built for battle, and held an energy staff that crackled with power. The king's voice was smooth, dangerous. "You will fight him." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "And if I don't?" The king smiled. "Then he will kill you where you stand." Daniel took a slow breath. He had expected something like this. But Salvera had warned him. He had no choice. The warrior lunged. Daniel barely dodged the first strike, the energy staff cutting through the air just inches from his face. He moved fast, stepping back and analyzing his opponent. The Zyraxian was stronger, heavily armored, and had a weapon. But Daniel was faster, more unpredictable. The warrior swung again. This time, Daniel ducked low and rolled to the side, grabbing a small metal object from the floor. He threw it, aiming for the warrior's head. The distraction worked. The Xeraxian flinched, just for a second, but that was all Daniel needed. He surged forward, slamming his fist into the warrior's exposed throat. The alien staggered, coughing, but quickly recovered. Daniel had no time to react before a powerful kick sent him flying backward. He hit the ground hard, pain exploding through his ribs. The warrior raised his energy staff for the final strike. Enough. The king's voice echoed through the chamber. The warrior stopped immediately, stepping back. Daniel groaned and pushed himself up. His body ached, but he was still standing. The king watched him with something close to interest. "You fight well, for a human." Daniel wiped the blood from his lip. "I do my best." The king smirked. "Perhaps I will keep you around a little longer." Daniel didn't respond. He was too busy thinking about what had just happened and what it meant. The king had tested him, and Daniel had survived. But this was only the beginning. As he was escorted back to his chambers, his fingers tightened around the small tracker Salvera had given him. Something was coming, and when it did, he would be ready. Daniel sat on the edge of his bed, rolling the small metallic tracker between his fingers. Salvera had given it to him in secret, a silent message that something was coming. The king's test had been brutal. The Xeraxian warrior could have killed him, should have killed him. But Daniel had survived. He had proven himself, though he wasn't sure if that was a good thing. Now he was left with more questions than answers. Why was Salvera helping him? What was the king planning? And what was he supposed to do next? A soft chime broke his thoughts. The doors slid open, and Salvera stepped inside. She was alone. No guards. Daniel stood. "You're taking a risk coming here." She glanced toward the door before speaking. "There is little time. The king is interested in you now." Daniel smirked. "I noticed." Salvera ignored the joke. "He sees potential in you, but also danger. He will not let you remain in this palace without a purpose." Daniel frowned. "What does that mean?" She took a slow breath. "He wants you to serve him." Daniel tensed. "Serve him? As what? A warrior?" Salvera shook her head. "Something worse." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "The king does not just rule through power. He rules through fear. He takes those who resist him and bends them to his will." Daniel's grip tightened on the tracker. "You think he'll try to do that to me?" She nodded. "He will try. And if you refuse, he will destroy you." Daniel exhaled. He had suspected this. The king saw him as a challenge, something to be controlled or eliminated. But then why had Salvera given him the tracker? He looked at her carefully. "You don't want that to happen, do you?" For the first time, her expression softened. "No." Silence stretched between them. It was an answer, but not the full truth. Daniel had learned to read people, and right now, Salvera looked like someone trapped in a dangerous game. He decided to push, "Then help me escape." Salvera's eyes flickered with hesitation. Escape is not so simple. Daniel took a step closer. "But it's possible." She didn't deny it. Before she could speak, another chime echoed through the room. She turned sharply. "I must go. The king is watching." Daniel clenched his fists. "You're not just here to warn me, are you?" She hesitated, then whispered, "The king believes I am testing your loyalty. That is what he expects me to report." Daniel's heart pounded. "And what will you tell him?" Salvera looked at him, something unspoken in her gaze. Then she turned and left. The palace's darkest secret. Daniel was escorted through the palace later that night. The guards took him down a different path, one he had never seen before. The air grew colder, the walls darker. Something was wrong. Finally, they reached a massive door. It opened with a deep mechanical groan. Inside, the room was vast, filled with tall, glass-like chambers lined against the walls. And inside those chambers, people, not Cyraxians, humans. Daniel's stomach twisted. Prisoners. Some were asleep, others barely conscious. Some looked like they had been here for years. A chill ran through him. The Cyraxians had been capturing humans, experimenting on them. And then, from the shadows, the king stepped forward. His red eyes glowed in the dim light. "You are not the first human I have taken, Daniel." Daniel forced himself to stay calm. "What do you want from me?" The king smirked. "Loyalty." He gestured to the prisoners. "These humans were once like you, defiant, stubborn, but they learned. They serve now in ways they never imagined." Daniel's jaw clenched. "And if I refuse?" The king chuckled. "Then you will join them." Silence. Then the king stepped closer. "But I offer you a choice." Daniel's muscles tensed. "What choice?" The king smirked. "Prove yourself. Become more than just a prisoner. Show me that you are useful, and I may let you live as something greater." Daniel didn't blink. "And if I say no?" The king's smirk faded. "Then I will break you." The words were quiet, but heavy with meaning. Daniel's mind raced. He needed to get out of here. But how? The palace was a fortress, and now he knew there were other humans here, trapped, suffering. He couldn't leave them behind. The guard stepped forward. "Take him back to his quarters." As they grabbed his arms, Daniel let himself be led away. But inside, he was already forming a plan. Escape wasn't just an option anymore. It was the only way. Daniel sat in his darkened quarters, his mind racing. The images of the imprisoned humans haunted him. Pale faces behind glass, their eyes empty, their bodies weak. The Cyraxian king had shown him the truth. Humans weren't guests here. They were captives. And Daniel knew one thing for sure. He had to escape, but not alone. He glanced at the small metallic tracker Salvera had secretly given him. It was proof that she wasn't just a silent observer. She wanted him to act. But could he trust her? Before he could think further, the door to his quarters slid open. Salvera stepped inside, her expression tense. "You saw them, didn't you?" Daniel stood up. "You knew. And you didn't tell me." Salvera sighed. "Would you have believed me before?" Daniel clenched his fists. She was right. Before today, he wouldn't have fully understood the danger he was in. But now, everything was clear. "We have to free them," he said. Salvera's sharp gaze locked onto his. "Do you know what you're saying?" Daniel stepped closer. "I do. And I think you want that too." She hesitated. Then, after a long moment, she exhaled. "You're not wrong." Daniel's heart pounded. This was it. She was willing to help. The escape plan. Salvera led him through a hidden corridor beneath the palace. The walls were damp, the air heavy with the scent of stone and metal. "There's a transport ship hidden near the eastern docking bay," she whispered. "It's lightly guarded, but security will tighten once they realize you're missing." Daniel's mind worked fast. What about the prisoners? Salvera's expression darkened. "That's the problem. The holding chambers are deep within the palace. Unlocking them will trigger alarms." Daniel exhaled. "Then we need a distraction." Salvera's eyes flickered with thought. "There is a way. The palace security runs on a central system. If we disable it, the guards will be forced to act manually. That will buy you time." Daniel nodded. "And you?" She hesitated. "I will stay." Daniel frowned. "No, the king will know you helped me." Salvera looked away. "I've already betrayed him the moment I gave you that tracker." Silence filled the corridor. Daniel didn't know why, but something in his chest tightened. Salvera had power here. She didn't have to help him, but she did. He couldn't just leave her to face the king's wrath alone. "We leave together." His voice was firm. Salvera blinked in surprise. "Daniel, this is bigger than." "No, I don't abandon the people who fight for me." For the first time, Salvera's expression softened. Then she nodded. The breakout begins. The plan had to move fast. Salvera led Daniel to a hidden terminal. The palace's security system blinked in glowing red symbols. Once I disable this, the guards will be blind for exactly 3 minutes. She tapped a few commands. You'll have to move quickly. Daniel's pulse quickened. Understood. Salvera hesitated. If something goes wrong. It won't. She gave him a sharp look but didn't argue. With a deep breath, she pressed the final command. The palace lights flickered. Alarms blared. And the chase began. Race against time. Daniel sprinted through the halls, knocking out a guard as he reached the prisoner chambers. Inside, the humans looked up in shock. We're getting out of here, Daniel called. One of the captives, a middle-aged man with scars on his arms, stepped forward. Who are you? Just someone who refuses to be a slave, Daniel answered. The man studied him, then nodded. Then we fight. Daniel moved quickly, unlocking the restraints while the palace roared with activity. Footsteps thundered in the distance. They were running out of time. The final stand. By the time they reached the eastern docking bay, Zyraxian guards had flooded the palace. The escape route was closing fast. Salvera was already waiting by the ship, her weapon drawn. Hurry! Daniel and the prisoners charged forward, but the guards blocked the exit. The king's voice boomed through the comms. You think you can defy me, human? Daniel clenched his fists. I don't just think it. I know it. The first guard lunged. Daniel dodged, delivering a sharp punch to the alien side. The other prisoners fought alongside him, using whatever strength they had left. Salvera fired, taking down 2 more guards. They were close. But then, a powerful force slammed into Daniel, sending him crashing to the ground. He looked up. The king was here. His red eyes burned with fury. You should have obeyed. Daniel wiped blood from his lip and smirked. Yeah, I've never been good at that. The king raised his weapon, but Salvera stepped in front of Daniel. Enough. Her voice was cold. The king's gaze locked onto her. You would betray your own kind. Salvera's grip tightened on her weapon. You betrayed them first. A tense silence filled the air. Then the alarms grew louder. The palace's full force was closing in. They had seconds left. Daniel grabbed Salvera's hand and pulled her toward the ship. The other prisoners followed. As the engines roared to life, the last thing Daniel saw was the king's furious expression as they escaped into the stars. The stolen ship tore through the dark expanse of space, its engines roaring as Daniel gripped the controls. His hands were steady, but his mind was racing. Behind them, the Zyraxian royal fleet was in pursuit, a dozen warships, heavily armed and closing fast. The humans he had rescued sat in the back, fear written all over their faces. They had escaped the palace, but they weren't free yet. Daniel turned to Salvera. We won't outrun them. We need another plan. Salvera, still catching her breath, looked at the radar. There's an asteroid belt ahead. It's dangerous, but we might lose them in there. Daniel grinned. Risky. I like it. Without hesitation, he pushed the thrusters to full power. The ship dived toward the asteroid field, the massive rocks floating like silent giants in the void. One wrong move, and they'd be space dust. The Zyraxian warships followed, their cannons blazing. The chase through the asteroids. Daniel weaved through the asteroid belt, dodging and twisting as enemy blasts barely missed them. A massive rock appeared ahead, too big to go around. Brace yourselves, he shouted. Instead of slowing, he accelerated. At the last second, he flipped the ship sideways, squeezing through a narrow gap. The Zyraxian ships weren't as lucky. One crashed into an asteroid, exploding into a ball of fire. Salvera let out a breath. That's one down. But the king's voice crackled over the ship's speakers. You cannot run forever, human. Daniel's jaw tightened. He glanced at Salvera. I think it's time to stop running. Turning the tables. Daniel's mind worked fast. He scanned the ship's weapon systems. Not much firepower, but enough for one good trick. Salvera, can you isolate their command ship? She nodded, tapping into the ship's computer. There. The king's vessel. If we disable it, the others might hesitate. Daniel grinned. Then let's give them a surprise. He spun the ship around, charging straight at the king's warship. The Xeraxians didn't expect an attack. Hold on, Daniel shouted. He fired the ship's last energy torpedo directly at the command ship's engine. The explosion rocked the battlefield. The king's warship spun out of control, flames bursting from its rear. The Xeraxian fleet hesitated, unsure of what to do without their leader's orders. Salvera turned to Daniel, wide-eyed. It worked. Daniel smirked. Yeah, but we're not done yet. A dangerous gamble. With the fleet in confusion, Daniel opened a direct transmission to the Xeraxian warriors. Listen up. Your king has lied to you. He's been keeping humans as prisoners, breaking every law of your honor. There was silence. The Xeraxian soldiers had been raised to believe in strength and fairness. But slavery, that was against their code. The king's furious voice interrupted. Do not listen to him. He is manipulating you. Daniel laughed. Then explain why your own queen helped me escape. Another silence. Doubt was spreading. Daniel took the chance. You have a choice. Keep fighting for a king who hides the truth or stand for what's right. Salvera stepped forward. My people, the truth is clear. This ends now. One by one, the Xeraxian ships powered down their weapons. The battle was over. The aftermath. With the Xeraxian fleet no longer a threat, Daniel guided the ship toward a nearby neutral planet. The rescued humans, still shaken, slowly realized the truth. They were free. As they stepped onto solid ground, Salvera stood beside Daniel, watching the sunrise. You could have left, she said softly, but you stayed. Daniel shrugged. Someone had to stop him. Might as well be me. She studied him, something unreadable in her eyes. You changed things today, Daniel. He smirked. Yeah. Then what now? Salvera took a deep breath. Now, we rebuild. Together. Daniel looked at the freed humans, at the Xeraxians who had turned against their king, and at the endless sky above. This wasn't just about escape anymore. It was the beginning of something new, and he was ready for it.